Alright, I'm back with another Destiny 2 video. I have been looking forward to / dreading this all week. The giant abilities TWAB, where it's 18 pages long. This little scroll bar is super tiny, and I am going to read it and react to it in real time. I just saw it went live a couple minutes ago. I have no idea how long this is going to take, but I guess we'll find out. So this is a Sandbox TWAB. And we already got the weapons one last time, so let's figure out just exactly what's going on here besides nerfing Shatter Dive. We got a new look at the Thorn armor up here, which is pretty cool. Alright, let's see. This week at Bungie, we take a look at every grain in the abilities Sandbox. Whew, okay. Hello and welcome to another Sandbox focused TWAB. If you're new around these parts, you may be asking, what's a Sandbox? Okay, we know what a Sandbox is, I think. It's like everything that you use in the game in terms of like weapons and abilities and things. The 30th anniversary is coming. This is when the patch hits, and next TWAB is going to be light because it's on Wednesday and it's right before Thanksgiving. There are buffs, there are nerfs, there are tuning levers they've unlocked with back-end changes, and clear separations between PvE and PvP. Very good. Okay, so let's figure this out. Kevin Yanes is back, and he is talking about, he usually does these. So he gave a brief roadmap, but now they heard overwhelming feedback that has been dominated by ability usage, with Crucible specifically. Players felt that abilities were firing with too frequently, with too much potency and too little investment. At its core, Destiny is a game about space magic, so any adjustments to our abilities must be made with care. We believe the changes we have made will keep the heart of what makes Destiny abilities fun intact while shaving down some of the excessive cases we've seen out there. I feel it's important to reinforce here that part of Destiny's strength is that it's a live game and we're able to iterate and improve as time goes on. This means that we're building new foundational systems like the one you'll read about today with that in mind. New foundational system. What does that mean? Are they like totally overhauling how ability regen works? That's kind of the impression I got from earlier balance changes they made, so I guess we'll see. We're giving ourselves more balancing knobs to tune than we've ever had before, and we hope you'll start to see why that's important as you read on. We hope 30th anniversary shakes up the Sandbox in new ways and gets you excited for even more changes coming in the Witch Queen. The team will likely go heads down for a bit as we still have Solar and Arc to 3.0ify alongside other insanely cool activities. The team takes player feedback very seriously, and as Destiny players ourselves, we have an intrinsic fire to keep improving things for everyone. We hope what you've seen over the last year reinforces that this team is both about competitive balance and making incredibly dope new shit. Okay, now I'm going to fade away into the ether as Eric Smith takes us into what's coming next. The Winds of Change. In 30th anniversary, we've changed the way ability cooldowns work. There we go. That is exactly what they did. Up until now, cooldowns across individual ability types, grenade, melee, class, and super, have generally been identical between all abilities of the same type. For example, all the grenades in today's Destiny 2 share the same cooldown time with the exception of stasis grenades. Their shared cooldown means that all grenades need to have roughly the same power output because they have the same time cost. For the 30th anniversary, we made a change that allows us to tune the cooldown of each ability separately. This gives us a new knob to turn when balancing abilities that are too powerful or not powerful enough. Now that we have this new system in place, we've done a cooldown tuning pass to all of the subclass abilities in the game. Oof, okay, no wonder this is so long. Tuning each ability's cooldown time against its power output. We've also tuned ability power outputs and assigned cooldown times accordingly. The best example of this might be the Flux Grenade. Take a look. Increase base cooldown from 82 seconds to 182 seconds. So I assume that's like if you have 0 discipline. Increased attached detonation damage from 150 to 250. One-shot kill in PvP. I'm already concerned that these are going to be like too sweeping of changes when like maybe we didn't need to do this much, but all right, we'll see. Increased damage versus PvE combatants by 15% on top of the base damage increase. Removed projectile tracking, added a small amount of aim assist, increased throw speed by 178%. Now sticks to all surfaces. Okay, so it's now a sticky thing. As you can see, Flux Grenade now has a very long cooldown, but it's a one-shot kill in PvP if you manage to land it. It also hits harder in PvE. As a reminder, the Flux Grenade is currently only available to Hunter Arc Striders. Now here's an example in the opposite direction. The Firebolt Grenade. Firebolt Grenade, reduce base cooldown from 82 seconds to 64 seconds, reduce damage per bolt from 90 to 65, increase damage versus PvE combatants by 15%. The Firebolt grenade now has a low cooldown time, especially at tier 10 discipline. It also has low damage output. These kinds of varied cooldowns and power output should make the game feel more dynamic and give more depth to build crafting. To make build crafting around cooldowns easier, you'll now be able to see the base cooldown time of your abilities when selecting them on a subclass screen. So I can already see, like, you know, things that give you double charges of grenades, like now because they function differently between grenades, or things like, you know, regen grenades quickly, you know, that's a lot of opportunities for different builds, because you're going to be able to like pick the right grenade for the situation, rather than like, okay, all of these have equal cooldowns and relatively equal power, so I'm just going to pick the same one every time. This does seem kind of interesting, so I'm curious about that. So on the character scene, you'll see the actual cooldown time of your abilities as they're affected by your equipped ability and armor stats. Gotcha. All right, a couple things to note about cooldown times in the UI. So they're not changing the discipline system or the strength system. Like, that's still the same. It's just they're rebalancing all of the cooldown times and power levels of like literally everything. The base cooldown time is actually the cooldown time at tier 3, of the relevant armor stat, because it's pretty hard to go below that most of the time. This is because the system technically penalizes you for tanking your stats below tier 3, in which case your cooldown would be longer than the base. We are looking into updating this to be more intuitive in a future release. Yeah, that's not great. Cooldown times for class abilities are not currently displayed due to a technical issue. We plan to fix this in a future release. All right. We've been calling this the variable ability cooldown system, and we think it's the beginning of a big change for the Destiny 2 Sandbox. It's a foundational change in preparation to move the light subclasses over to the subclass 3.0 system that Stasis currently uses. For the 30th anniversary, we're using it to change the cooldown of nearly every ability in the game. One of our design goals this year was to reduce the amount of ability spam in the Crucible and put the focus back on gunplay. To this end, we made ability cooldown times longer on average than they were before. We don't want the PvE experience to suffer for the sake of PvP balance, though, so we tried to compensate where possible. For example, we've increased all grenade damage versus PvE combatants by 15% or more. This should make grenades feel like bigger power moments than they do in today's game. Melee ability cooldowns haven't been quite as increased quite as much as grenade cooldowns, and some of the less aggressive melee attacks have lower cooldowns than before. Class ability cooldowns also have generally increased, but the changes vary depending on which ability is equipped. Okay. We're excited to see how these changes feel once they hit the live game. We'll be monitoring and adjusting accordingly in future releases. I'll now pass the mic to Mike Humboldt to talk about big changes to super cooldowns. Okay, so super cooldowns are a part of the cooldown thing here. All right. Since Destiny's launch in 2014, super energy gain has been almost entirely passive. Your intellect stats dictate how quickly your super regenerates, with a few other elements like orbs of power, armor, and weapon perks, and defeating targets as active sources. This system worked well for a long time, but has issues that have grown more obvious as the game has evolved, and overall player skill, especially skill in evaluating how to play around their character build, has increased. Example, in high-stakes game modes like Trials of Osiris or Survival, where each life is precious, passive play becomes more common as players sit back and wait for their supers to close out a tight game. In general, we want the most efficient way to gain super energy to be actively engaging in combat. That doesn't mean you need to win every fight, but we want you to try. To get us closer to that goal, we're making a big change to the system. Super regeneration will still have a passive component scaled by your intellect stat, but at a significantly reduced rate. Okay, so no more 100 intellect builds as the primary target. On top of your passive regeneration, you will also gain super energy by dealing and taking damage to or from opponents. Okay, so taking damage, that doesn't exist now, right? I don't think. Here are a few goals for this new system. In PvE, super uptime should be relatively unchanged from the live game, if not slightly higher. We are happy with the frequency of supers in most PvE content and don't want to make big changes right now on that front. Everyone should get at least one super in a 6v6 match that goes to the score or time limit as long as they engage in regular combat. Okay. Expression of power through using your awesome space magic is a core part of what makes Destiny special, and we're not looking to change that. We think the cadence of supers in 6v6 modes is slightly too high, but we don't expect a dramatic change in super uptime for most players in playlists like Controlled or Iron Banner as a result of these changes. Supers should be less frequent in 3v3 modes than in the live game, where 2 supers per match is a fairly regular occurrence. Yeah, that's true. These modes are about expression of player skill. We want that skill to be primarily about team coordination, positioning, intelligent use of your abilities, and first and foremost, gunplay. Whether it's absolutely skill in outmaneuvering active supers or playing around super uptime, supers in general are purposefully designed to be accessible power fantasies for all players, and that inherently creates asymmetry that we need to account for in more competitive play. That is very important, and something that has kind of always bothered me about high-level Destiny, where it's just like, every so often they just like shut off the kind of skill game and you're like, okay, it's time to just super everyone, and then we go back to normal again. So I guess they're saying the supers will be more like once per 3v3 game as opposed to twice for the most part. Primary weapon play should have a noticeable benefit in super energy regeneration. With this new system, we are scaling energy gains up and down based on the granularity on the source of the damage, both outgoing and incoming. Outgoing primary damage has a significantly higher return of super energy per damage point than any other type of damage. Okay, so this is to encourage primary fight instead of just running around with shotguns and things. So that's interesting. Different supers should come online at different times in a given match, and your super of choice should have an impact on how quickly it regenerates. To reiterate what we mentioned above, we have lived in a world where nearly every super in the game shares the same cooldown regardless of their efficacy in a given game mode. Now that we have made the foundational change to differentiate cooldowns per individual ability, we want to address the super o'clock issue in Crucible, where 3 minutes into a match, 12 supers are simultaneously popped and chaos ensues. We also want to open up build crafting space where your super's cooldown time is an important element in your decision-making process based on how high you want your indolent stat to be. Yeah, that's a good change. To that end, we separated supers into cooldown tiers that affect both the passive regeneration rate as well as the damage-based regeneration rate. This tiering is primarily influenced by each super's kill potential, where most one-off supers are unlikely to wipe a team or a room of combatants, but a long-lasting roaming super can and should have a trade-off as a result. We've also taken into account the general potency of the subclass kits where possible. For example, later on we'll discuss Shatter Dive and changes we're making which impact how effective the Revenant Hunter is in the neutral game, causing us to shift some of the potency to the super's uptime as a result. It's also important to stress that this is the first iteration of the system where any given super will fall into the recharge rate tiers will change as we continue tuning. These are the super regeneration rate tiers that we're launching with on December 7th. Okay, interesting. So you get to see kind of their ranking order of what they believe is the most useful. Tier 5, Fastest, Well of Radiance by itself. Tier 4, Blade Barrage and Silence and Squall. Silence and Squall is Tier 4? Really? Wow, okay. I mean, they did just kind of mention that, but Tier 3, Shadow Shot, Burning Maul, Arc Staff, Nova Bomb, Thunder Crash. Tier 2, Golden Gun, Chaos Reach, Nova Warp, Storm Trance, Daybreak, Sentinel Shield. Tier 1, Slowest, Spectral Blades, Fist of Havoc, Hammer of Soul, Glacial Quake, Winter's Wrath. Definitely need Glacial Quake to be worse. So it's the roaming ones that are the slowest regeneration and the one-offs, generally speaking, that are the highest, with exceptions like Arc Staff and Burning Maul, which is interesting. I guess just those because those are kind of worse than these in general. So interesting. Okay. As Kevin and Eric mentioned, that sets us up for future as we move toward the subclass 3.0 system. As an example, for the 30th anniversary, things like Deadfall and Mobius Quiver variants of Shadow Shot will share the same cooldown tier, but with the Void 3.0 launch in February, they could exist in different tiers based on their potency. By that same token, Ward of Dawn, which is currently tied to Sentinel Shield's cooldown, will be moved into the Tier 5 group as a standalone super with Void 3.0. Okay, that makes sense. Taking it down a notch, let's talk about non-super abilities for a moment. In the 527-21 TWAB, Kevin shared our foundational pillars for the role we want abilities to play in the PvP combat sandbox. As a quick refresher, this is where we want to be. Weapons are the primary way players engage with combat. Non-super abilities accentuate or augment the combat, but should rarely solve an encounter by themselves. Abilities have clear strengths, weaknesses, and counterplay. Build crafting is rewarding within the moment-to-moment combat loop of Destiny. We're not there yet. In general, ability uptime in the Crucible is too high for their current potency, and it's difficult to understand when an opponent will regain an ability after using it. Some of that uptime comes from passive cooldowns, but many of our outliers also come from the elements of the build crafting system that have previously been unified in ability energy returns between PvE and PvP. With the 30th anniversary, we've taken a pass at a significant number of these elements. Across subclass perks, armor mods, and exotic armor pieces, we have tuned PvP energy regeneration separately from their base PvE values, which we are not changing. Alright, that is a very good news, because I was worried that this whole thing was going to just dunk on PvE, but obviously they took that under consideration. Per our pillars, we want build crafting to be rewarding, but in its current state, the combinatorial nature of these perks and items leads to an unsustainable ability energy economy that diminishes weapon play in PvP. For this tuning pass, we focus primarily on items that feed into self-perpetuating loops of ability energy gains. Here's a brief list of the affected items. Subclass neutral game perks. These perks have had their ability energy regeneration reduced by roughly 50% in PvP. We targeted perks that can either activate out of combat with a single button press or those that were returning amounts of ability energy that were significantly out of band. Whisper of Shards, Arc Web, Rising Storm, Ionic Traces, Electrostatic Surge, Aftershocks, Inertia Override, Benevolent Dawn, Practice Makes Perfect, Dark Matter. Okay. Yeah, I figured that was the case. So these are not changing for PvE, but they are being cut in half for PvP. Subclass in super perks. These perks scale down energy as you get kills in your super. These perks often results in supers being able to roam the map for much longer than is healthy for the game and mean that a victim can die frequently to an active super. Yeah, this is definitely Striker Titan and Everlasting Fire. So the refund decay decays more aggressively in PvP, so the minimum energy refund is twice as quick. This is not changed in PvE. Exotic Armor. Each exotic below has a custom tuning pass focused on their ability energy return in PvP. Man, they really went all out with this. It's so much. Like, is this all necessary? I don't know. I feel like things weren't like that bad, but I guess everyone just wanted Shatter Dive nerfed, and look where we are. Frosties no longer stacks multiplicatively in PvP with other regeneration buffs. It's now an additive scaler. It does not change in PvE. Heart of Inmost Light, ability energy regeneration scalars reduced by 50% in PvP. Reworked it so activating multiple abilities now reliably results in multiple empowered stacks. The stacking behavior was previously a bug, but this seemed like a good opportunity to promote it to a feature. Okay. Controverse Hold. Duration of the grenade regeneration buff is no longer random between 1 and 4 seconds, and now a fixed duration of 1.75 seconds. Reduced grenade energy regeneration scalar by 50% in PvP. The average duration due to waiting was 1.71, with a 1 second duration being the most common, so this should improve the exotic's consistency across the game with a lower return in PvP. Doomfang, reduce super energy and an activation when an opposing player is killed by a void melee by 50%. Does not change in PvE. Yeah, Doomfang, you could just go forever. Shinobu's reduce grenade energy gain on hits versus players by 66%. Yeah, well, there's your arc grenade change for you, or based on what they made before. Crown of Tempest, grenade melee and super regeneration scalar buff duration reduced from 7 seconds to 4 seconds in PvP. Does not change in PvE. The Stag are everyone's favorite right now. Reduced class ability energy refund on shield break by 50% in PvP. No change in PvE. Oh, that was just on shield break? I guess I didn't realize that. Yeah, that was a whole lot of rifts going on. Armor mods, in general, we've reduced energy returns by these mods by roughly 50% in PvP, depending on the number of copies of the mod you have slotted. All right, you know all these mods. I don't have to read them all. Just any ones that give you energy or super energy. This is a big foundational shift for us, and we expect to do a lot of tuning as time goes on. So as always, we'll be on the lookout for how things are feeling across the game, and we'll adjust accordingly. Now I'll throw it back over to Eric for some spicy details on more abilities, tuning changes you can expect with the 30th anniversary. Dang, this is long. Yeah, we're like maybe halfway. Oof, I need a drink. I'm gonna drink some water here. That was the sound of me drinking water. In case you haven't caught on yet, the list of abilities changes we're making to the 30th anniversary is massive. We've touched nearly every ability in the game in some small way. We won't go over the full patch notes because it's mind-numbingly long, but let's take a look at some of the more provocative balance changes. This isn't even the full thing. Okay. Stasis Crystals. Stasis Crystals do a lot. On top of freezing players when they're created, they also block line of sight, block movement, act as explosive barrels. It's all a bit much for PvP. With this release, Stasis Crystals will now slow players instead of freezing them, and they'll do much less damage to players when they detonate. So that is part of a Shatter Dive nerf by itself. As far as PvE is concerned, Stasis Crystals will still freeze combatants, and we've increased Stasis Crystal detonation damage versus PvE combatants. Great. Looking at the numbers, it was almost always better to shoot directly at a combatant instead of at a crystal near a combatant. This change should help crystals better live out their explosive barrel dreams. Yeah, I definitely have seen that. That's a good change. Stasis Crystals. While forming, Stasis Crystals will now slow nearby players instead of freezing them. Okay, so they're increasing the slow freeze radius while forming from 1.75 to 2.6. Reduced crystal detonation damage versus players by 55%. There's part of a big Shatter Dive nerf. Increased detonation damage versus PvE combatants by 60%. That is very large. And then increased crystal detonation radius from 6 meters to 8 meters. That appears to be in both modes. Hunter Oh boy, dodge is getting nerfed again. In order to meet our goal of less ability spam in the Crucible, we're reducing how often hunters can dodge. Gambler's dodge is getting hit the hardest because they completely circumvent melee ability cooldown times. It also completely changes the hunter's silhouette in PvP, making it very powerful. In addition, hunter dodges will no longer break projectile tracking, meaning it's less of a get-out-of-jail free card when a tracking rocket or another slow-moving projectile is flying towards you. Okay, that's not great. Marksman dodge. Tier 10 mobility cooldown increased from 11 seconds to 14 seconds. Base cooldown unchanged. Gambler's dodge. Tier 10 mobility cooldown increased from 11 seconds to 18 seconds. Good lord. That is not going to be worth running. Increased base cooldown duration from 29 to 38 seconds. Whew. Revenant. You guessed it. The stasis crystal changes detailed earlier mean that the Hunter Revenant Shatter Dive will now almost never kill a full health Guardian. Shatter Dive may still kill if the hunter is using Whisper of Fissures, Touch of Winter, and the target is in the very center of all 6 crystals, but that has been incredibly rare in our playtesting. I think we can all agree that Shatter Dive is too powerful. We tried a number of fixes over the past few releases, but the truth is that as long as Stasis Crystals froze players and Shatter Dive shattered players, it was going to be too good. But it's not all rain clouds and puddles for Shatter Dive hunters. The increase in Stasis Crystal damage versus PvE combatants makes Shatter Dive a great choice in PvE. On top of that, we're increasing Shatter Dive damage versus frozen combatants by 100%. Alright, that's interesting. I assume that's just PvE. Much less lethal versus players due to Stasis Crystal changes, much more lethal versus combatants due to Stasis Crystal changes, increased shatter damage versus frozen PvE combatants by 100%. So this is 60% increase plus 100% increase, so that is going to be very good in PvE. Grim Harvest, increased fragment slots from 2 to 3. Nice. Top Tree Archstrider. This change to the combination blow melee was made possible by our variable ability cooldown system. Previously, Top Tree Archstriders were basically required to use Gambler's Dodge with this tree. We hope this change will make this ability viable even if you're not using Marksman Dodge. Okay. Combination Blow. Reduce base cooldown duration from 96 seconds to 15 seconds. Alright, that has to be one of the biggest buffs in this thing. Because it doesn't say damage or ability stuff is near for that. So that's hilarious. Okay. Bottom Tree Night Stalker. The Vanish and Smoke melee now has low damage output but high utility. Our data shows that this subclass tree is struggling in PvP, so we've decided to increase how often Pathfinder hunters can go invisible. Vanish and Smoke melee reduce base cooldown from 96 seconds to 75 seconds. Titan. Oh wait, do we have no solar changes? Interesting. Or they're in the patch notes and they're just not going to list them all. Shoulder charges. Yeah, I saw that coming. In our effort to put emphasis back on gunplay in the Crucible, we decided to reduce the number of abilities that can one-shot a full health Guardian. As such, the Titan's 3 shoulder charges are no longer one-shot abilities in PvP. To balance this out, we've made the shoulder charges quicker to activate, easier to hit with, and travel further. We've also increased their damage in PvE. Good. In our experience, they're still too powerful. What's the flying one? Peregrine Greaves? Alright, let's see if that's crazy now. They're still too powerful in PvP in combination with short-range weapons and when used as a movement tool. We wanted to curb shoulder charges potency now that we've tuned down shotguns as their current counter. We'll be monitoring the data and feedback and adjusting accordingly. All shoulder charges. No longer one-shot players. Sprint activation time reduced from 1.5 seconds to 1.25 seconds. Increased range from 5.5 meters to 6.8 meters. Oh, thank God for the frickin' stasis one. Targeting cone width increased by 10%. Increased damage versus PvE combatants by 25%. That's pretty big. Seismic Strike, Arc Shoulder Charge, reduced AoE damage from 90 to 40. Now blinds enemies in the area on hit. Increased base cooldown from 82 to 90 seconds. Shield Bash, reduced AoE damage from 90 to 40. Is this PvE too? Interesting. I mean, I guess the total damage is increased. Increased base cooldown from 82 seconds to 90 seconds. Hammer Strike, reduced direct impact damage from 170 to 120. Increased base cooldown from 82 to 90. Alright. Even with the rally barricade changes we made in Seasons of the Lost, using this ability during a firefight is still a risky proposition. We spaced out the cooldowns of the 2 barricades to make the chase slightly more interesting. Are they not going to change activation time still? I feel like that's the one thing people have been asking for barricades forever. They are not changing it. Towering Barricade, increase base cooldown from 37 seconds to 40 seconds. Rally Barricade, reduce base cooldown duration from 37 seconds to 32 seconds. People are still not going to use Rally Barricade in PvP, I will tell you that. Behemoth, we agree with the general community feedback that the Behemoth could use some love in PvE. We're hoping these changes to Diamond Lance make this aspect a top tier PvE pick. That should be good. Shiver Strike is getting a big damage buff during the Glacial Quake Super. The Whisper of Change fragment buff is also very spicy and should help the Behemoth's survivability in pinnacle PvE activities. Whisper of Change can be used by all Stasis subclasses, but making crystals is kind of the Behemoth's thing, so we're listing it here. Diamond Lance, increase fragment slots from 1 to 3, good. Now spawn a Diamond Lance upon killing a PvE combatant with a Stasis weapon, killing 3 players with a Stasis weapon in a single life, killing an enemy with a Stasis ability, shattering an enemy. A lot of generation. Does the damage stay the same? I guess so. Shiver Strike, increase Shiver Strike damage while in Glacial Quake by 50%. I don't remember what Shiver Strike does. Is that the dash? I don't remember. Whisper of Change, increase damage resistance versus PvE combatants from 25% to 40%. That's pretty good. Bottom Tree Striker. This class is absolutely dominating PvP this season, so we're turning it down a notch. Changes we made to Fist of Havoc and Season of the Lost helped top tree as intended, but they also turned bottom tree into a monster. On top of that, the Stasis nerfs and other changes we made over the past few releases created a power vacuum that's Striker Bot filled with extreme prejudice. We hope these changes put Striker Bot back in the pack instead of towering high above everything else. Knockout, melee lunge range, and melee damage bonus now deactivate after a melee kill. Okay, is that also in PvE? Seems like it. Trample, super energy gain from Fist of Havoc, light attack now decays minimum amount over 3 PvP kills, down from 7. Frontal Assault melee, increased base cooldown from 82 seconds to 106 seconds. Yeesh. Fist of Havoc, heavy slam radius reduced from 8 meters to 6 meters, but only in the bottom tree. Yeah, that's pretty significant. Warlock, uncharged melee. Alright. So they're changing the melee again. Warlocks have been losing slap fights for too long. Yes, up until now, Warlocks haven't been able to melee back-to-back as quickly as Titans and Hunters. No more. At the 30th anniversary, Warlocks will be able to melee just as quickly as Titans and Hunters. We're also removing the 1 meter range extension Warlocks received to compensate, so that didn't go great, apparently. We still think that the idea of each class having unique qualities to the melee is interesting, but we want to do it in a way that won't cause one class to consistently lose slap fights, maybe someday in the future. So they reduced the range and reduced suppression time after melee, so they made it faster. Yep, that seems like the right call. Middle Tree Voidwalker. In our effort to do away the one-shot abilities that are frustrating to be hit by, Handheld Supernova is also getting the shoulder charge treatment. Can no longer one-shot in PvP. To compensate, it now travels farther and pushes enemies back. We also increased the damage of Handheld Supernova and Nova Warp versus champion and boss combatants. We had increased their damage in Season of the Lost, but they felt like they could use even more juice. Handheld Supernova, reduced damage versus players, now deals max 150. Increased damage versus champions and bosses by 30%. Alright, that's something. Increased projectile range from 12 meters to 14 meters. Now pushes targets away from the Warlock on detonation. Interesting. Nova Warp, increased damage versus champions and bosses by 30%. And that's on top of what? The 50% damage buff Nova Warp got in PvE already? Alright, I'm keeping an eye on this. This sounds potentially very good. Also, keep in mind, this is the class that's getting the 3.0 treatment, so with the Witch Queen. So this could be kind of crazy with all the other things that will come with that. Shadebinder. We feel Shadebinder is a pretty good place with a couple of exceptions. One, Winter's Wrath is still the best super for shutting down other supers, and it's not even close. Winter's Wrath must now freeze and shatter other supers twice to kill them. As a general rule, roaming supers shouldn't be able to one-shot other supers. 2, the Penumbral Brass melee is too difficult to land against PvE combatants. Thank you. Jeez. When we made the ability harder to land in PvP, it had a negative effect on the PvE experience. Literally one of the worst feeling abilities in the game, by far. We've increased the proximity detonation radius against PvE combatants to make it easier to land. All 3 stasis grenades now have different cooldown times, so we made a change to Bleak Watcher to avoid a situation where it was always best to use the grenade with the shortest cooldown time. This results in an overall cooldown increase for Bleak Watcher, which fits its incredibly high power outputs. Winter's Wrath, reduce Shatter Pulse damage versus supers. Must now generally freeze and shatter all supers twice to eliminate. Penumbral Blast, increase proximity detonation by 100%. That's good. Bleak Watcher. While Bleak Watcher is equipped, all stasis grenades charge at Glacier Grenade rates. Alright, that's a pretty big nerf. That's all for now, folks. I think we covered the big stuff. There are a bunch of other small changes coming in the 30th anniversary, but we will cover everything else in the official patch notes. As you can see, the team has been hard at work adjusting the Sandbox globally. We hope the picture we're painting here reinforces the statements we made in the past. Sandbox is going to evolve alongside the game. As we hit year 5 and beyond, this statement will become even more true with new and exciting changes coming with the Subclass 3.0 experience. Stay tuned to the patch notes when the 30th anniversary goes live December 7th. Alright, so that's all the ability stuff. I do not... Oh, okay, so this is actually kind of relevant because I've been talking about this. Destiny 2 leaving Xbox Game Pass. So everything is leaving Game Pass. Alright, so December 8th, Destiny 2 and its expansions, Forsaken, Shadowkeep, and Beyond Light will leave Xbox Game Pass on console and cloud. They will remain on Xbox Game Pass for PC, and they're not giving a date for how long that will be. Because this just started that long ago, so it'd be very weird to take them off now. Probably for a year, so probably a year after that went on. Once Destiny 2 leaves Xbox Game Pass, players who don't own any of the expansions on the Xbox platform will lose access to campaign missions, expansion-specific activities, raids, dungeons, hunts, exo challenges, Nightfall Strikes, and Trials of Osiris. The Stasis subclass, which is Beyond Light specific. Yup, that's what I said. The middle tree supers for each subclass. Oh, that's... Wait. But Forsaken is going free? So, why? I'm confused about that. Okay, the 10% off perk for silver purchases. That's... Wait, I don't understand. Why are you losing the middle tree supers if Forsaken is, like, literally going free-to-play, like, starting when that hits? I don't get that. Alright. Items such as exotics already acquired will still be available for players who earn them. Previously purchased season passes will remain active. Players who wish to continue playing Destiny 2 on Xbox should look for Destiny 2 expansion discounts that will be available soon. And the Witch Queen, as they've said a bazillion times, is not launching on Game Pass at all. So, for the billionth time, that is not happening. Xbox players are getting blocked. And now we are down to Movie of the Week and Art of the Week. That's good. And, yeah, let's see. Let's do the finale here. Long TWAB is long. No. It takes a lot of work on the part to get a TWAB out the door. Our friends on the Sandbox team wrote the bulk of this update. We can't thank them enough for their efforts not only in developing the game, but taking the time to run through goals and keep players informed. Between the dev team, VisD team, I don't know what VisD is. Visual development, localization team, editorial team, player support team, Bungie.net team, Bungie Foundation team, and countless other teams and individuals who have helped us ship TWABs in the past. It's so crazy to me that we ship these nearly every single week of a given year. They're not all mega TWABs like today, but they still take a bit of work to get out the door as we continue to serve the community and provide transparency into our studio and daily lives. And he's not going to mention this because he's so humble, but Bungie was nominated again for the Game Awards for Best Community Support, and I think they deserve it. I think they are very, very good at that, and continue to be. Well, I know I'm a week away for Thanksgiving. I'm thankful for every single one of them. Much love and see you next week for a short and sweet TWAB. Till December 7th, I'll be dreaming of these Sandbox changes. All I can think about is jumping on Arc Hunter and equipping Flux Grenades. Bet you can't stick it. Okay, thanks for letting me read that all out. Okay, so next TWAB, not this one, but maybe the one after, could be something about armor, like if they're buffing any exotic armor or perks or anything like that. We can check that out. In terms of this actual totality of these changes here, that was actually, this seems okay to me. I was worried they were just going to do like some complete nutty overhaul, but like I get what they're doing, and a lot of it just seems really PvP focused, and like it will pretty significantly reduce ability spam. I think it's definitely a good idea to be able to tune different melees and different grenades, and different class abilities and different supers with different countdown timers. I guess it didn't really register to me that those were all the same always. Like I guess I should have figured that out, but it's interesting to like, so now you have like a high cooldown grenade skill shot, and then you have like the grenade, the other firebolt one that you can spam all the time. It doesn't do that much damage. I think this is a positive change. We'll see what it does to the PvP sandbox, because obviously, it's hard to foresee everything that's going to happen, but it's also hard to gauge because we're going to be in the system for 3 months, and then Void 3.0 is going to hit, and then I presume they're going to do the other ones over the course of the following year. I'm still not really sure on the timeline of that. And then we're probably going to have to go back to, the drawing board when all the fragments and aspects hit for all these subclasses, because that's going to totally change everything in terms of like how you build out your character. So this will be like a little bit of an interesting kind of 3-month interim period here. Some of those buffs look pretty hefty. I'm things like the middle tree void stuff for Warlock getting buffed in PvE again. And then all of the charges being buffed 25%, all the grenades being buffed 15%. So this does, like, as risky as this is to, like, oh no, PvP is gonna crap on PvE, like that, they seem to really have kept that in mind, and there's both a lot of separate tuning, but also a lot of PvE specific buffs when a lot of stuff is getting nerfed for PvP in a lot of ways. So my first impressions of this, like, 30 seconds after finishing reading it, are positive. I think that this sounds pretty good to me. But yeah, we will see how this goes in, 2.5 weeks here. So yeah, I am probably going to lose my voice after that. How do Twitch streamers talk for like 12 hours a day? I don't understand how anyone does that. I'm like, want to take a nap after this. So, anyway, if you made it through this whole thing, I salute you. I have no idea how long this ran, but at least 30 minutes, I think. But anyway, thanks for watching, and I will talk to you guys later. Take care.